So we're going to now start looking at one particular crime, homicide. And this is probably the crime with which you have the greatest familiarity. And so what we will do is look at the variety of ways which someone could be punished for the crime of homicide, and then we're going to break it down at a much more granular level and look at each form. So let me share the screen with and let you look at the chart. So here you have um, Pennsylvania's generic homicide statute. Uh, this is not what the indictment would allege. This is like all the ways that a person could be charged with unlawfully taking the life of another person. A person is guilty of homicide if he intentionally, knowingly, recklessly, or negligently causes the death of another human being. Of course, intentionally, negligently, recklessly, or negligently, those are all your possible mens rea terms. So what you see is there is a single actus reus term, cause. However you cause the death, whether you strangle or stab or run over in your car or let a piece of farm machinery get out of control. There's no limit to the number of ways that you can cause another person's death. But there are four different categories of the mental state with which you could do this unlawfully. And you see there intentionally, knowingly, recklessly, or negligently. And what you'll find is that the type of mens rea will determine the type of punishment. Let me move now to the classification, which you're probably all familiar with. Criminal homicide shall be classified as murder, and as you know, there are degrees of murder: voluntary manslaughter or involuntary manslaughter. Now, as many of you noted in our early classes, the term involuntary manslaughter is absolutely something of a misnomer. It sounds like something you could do in your sleep, or something that you could do, unintentionally, which sleep would be an example of that. But involuntary manslaughter is not at all what it sounds like. Involuntary manslaughter is simply a form of killing in which you have done something unreasonable. You have driven drunk. You have driven far in excess of the speed limit. And in so doing, you've taken another life. It's called involuntary because you didn't mean to kill the other person. But that's also true in Pennsylvania of third-degree murder. So this is a very bizarre category. We'll learn more about it and learn how that these categories really are difficult to distinguish from one another. You also see there voluntary manslaughter. Well, what does that mean? You'll find with voluntary manslaughter, what that basically means is you responded to some kind of stimuli. You're still guilty. You should have restrained yourself, but you responded to some kind of stimuli. You watched someone kill your child. You walked in on your spouse with another person in bed. Increasingly, that latter one is not regarded as a justification for reducing something from murder to manslaughter, but historically it was. But these are the three broad categories of unlawful killing, of homicide, that we'll be then drilling down into and looking at the specific elements. One of the things I want to preview for you is that while there can be very clear examples of first-degree premeditated intentional killing, Adolf Hitler or Ted Bundy or John Wayne Gacy, or any number of sort of, plotted serial killers. Those folks would all qualify unquestionably as having killed with intent, with premeditation. But what you're going to find is once we then move below that level, how we actually distinguish between, say, third-degree murder in Pennsylvania and involuntary manslaughter or negligent killing, those things are going to be very difficult to actually put lines on, and it will be a matter of process for juries. And we'll talk about the difficulty that juries have with this kind of work, just kind of the impossible situation that they're put in. But we'll talk about what the legal categories are, what courts have said they mean, and how those lines that courts have defined are incredibly blurry, even for some cases that distinguish between premeditated killings and those that aren't. You'll find a lot of premeditated killings that look a lot like things we would think to be archetypal examples of involuntary manslaughter or third degree murder. You'll find that at the margins, you'll have a difficult time distinguishing some of these cases. But all that to say in this initial video that these initial statutes tell you something that you probably already knew, that there are degrees of homicide, and those degrees of homicide will correlate to different amounts of punishment.